It will be a catastrophe far worse than war. Many things will perish. This will be one of the signs. Prepare to spend days in utter darkness. These days are rapidly approaching, and you will be as dead as if you had not eaten or drank anything. Padre Pio, a well-known saint from the 20th century, was an Italian priest of the Capuchin order, famed for his spiritual skills and prophecies. Some of these forecasts he wrote down, while others were told orally. One of these prophecies about 3 days of absolute darkness terrified many people. This forecast, along with others he made, is still highly contested today, implying that it will occur soon. However, nothing was as startling as what he projected for 2025, which was so significant that it shocked the entire globe. Now, let's look at Padre Pio's mysterious and terrible prophecies for 2025. So if you believe in God and admire Padre Pio, subscribe to the channel right away. Francesco Forgione, better known as Padre Pio, was born on May 25, 1887, in Pietrelcina, a small town in the province of Benevento, in southern Italy's Campania area. His parents, Grazio Mario Forgione and Maria Giuseppa di Nunzio Forgione, were humble farmers. Francesco began working on the farm and caring for the family's sheep when he was 10 years old. This basic and arduous life developed his diligent and dedicated personality. Saints were celebrated all year in Pietrelcina, and Francesco's family was deeply religious, attending Mass every day and praying the Rosary every night. It's no surprise that he was baptized and served as an altar boy at the local church. Faith was a strong character in his family. For example, his sister Grisha became a nun. Francesco demonstrated his unique personality from a young age, opting at the age of 5 to devote his life to God. According to Padre Agostino of San Marco's notebook, Francesco suffered from a number of ailments as a youngster, including acute gastroenteritis at age 6 and typhoid fever at the age of 10. Despite suffering from typhoid disease, Francesco Forgione began to have divine visions and spiritual social ecstasies early on, which fueled his desire to devote his life to religion. After finishing 3 years of public education in 1897, he was motivated to join monastic life after witnessing a young Capuchin friar solicit contributions in the countryside. When he declared his desire to join the order to his parents, they traveled to Morcone, 21 kilometers north of Pietrelcina, to see whether he could be accepted. The friars were interested in accepting him, but requested that he improve his academic standing. To do this, Francesco's father traveled to the United States to work and gather funds for his son to pursue individual lessons. During this time, Francesco was confirmed in the Catholic religion on September 27, 1899, and he met the order's academic requirements through private study. He enrolled in the Capuchin Friars Novitiate in Morcone on January 6, 1903, when he was 15. Shortly after, he took on the Franciscan habit and the name Friar Pio in honor of Pope Pasquale, whose relic is housed in the chapel of Santa Anna in Pietrelcina. He took his initial vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Friar Pio proceeded to Umbria's St. Francis of Assisi convent to begin his priestly education. At the age of 17, he experienced health issues such as lack of appetite, insomnia, exhaustion, fainting, and severe migraines. He often vomited and could only eat milk and cheese. Many adherents believe that this is when he began to experience unexplained happenings. For example, during prayers, Friar Pio frequently appeared remote and utterly absorbed. A friar from the same time period claimed witnessing him in ecstasy, levitating above ground. In June 1905, Friar Pio's health deteriorated, so his superiors decided to relocate him to a mountain convent in the hopes that fresh air would assist. Nonetheless, there was no noticeable improvement, and the doctors recommended that he return home. Despite his health issues, Padre Pio took his solemn profession in 1907 and was ordained a priest at the Cathedral of Benevento. 3 years later, he celebrated his first Mass at Our Lady of the Angels Parish Church. Due to his frail state, he was allowed to stay with his family in Pietrelcina 4 days following the celebration while still wearing the Capuchin habit. He stayed in Pietrelcina until 1916, partly due to his deteriorating health and also to care for his family while his father and brother were temporarily in the United States. If you enjoy our content and want to support us, click on the Super Thanks button below. Your Super Thanks is not just a donation, it is a blessing that supports our mission to share the transformative journey of Jesus.
During these years, Padre Pio communicated frequently with his spiritual directors, Padre Benedetto and Padre Agostino, both friars at the Capuchin monastery of San Marco in Lamis. In these letters, he made grave prophecies regarding events that will occur in 2025. When World War I broke out, 4 friars from Padre Pio's community were called to join the Italian army. Padre Pio served as a seminary teacher and spiritual advisor at this time. He oversaw the community when another friar was called up. But on November 15, 1915, he was drafted and deployed to the ex-medical corps in Naples. Padre Pio was released and recalled several times, due to his delicate condition until August, when he was eventually pronounced unfit for military service and permanently discharged. Padre Pio then transferred to the agricultural community of the Capuchin convent of Our Lady of Grace in San Giovanni, Rotondo, which housed 7 friars at the time. He lived at San Giovanni Rotondo for the majority of his life, with the exception of his wartime service. As a priest, Padre Pio was recognized for converting many people to Catholicism and was particularly fond of the Rosary. Padre Pio equated weekly confessions to cleaning a room once a week. He recommended individuals to meditate and conduct self-examination twice a day, once in the morning to prepare for the day's challenges, and again at night to reflect on their activities. His spiritual advice was sometimes summed in the memorable phrase, "Pray, hope, and don't worry," emphasizing the importance of putting God's will first. By 1925, Padre Pio had converted an ancient convent building into a modest medical clinic with a few beds, primarily for those in dire need. In 1940, a committee was created to build a larger clinic, and donations began to arrive. Construction began in 1947, and while the hospital was first named after Fiorello LaGuardia, it was later recognized as a Padre Pio project, emphasizing his commitment to spiritual and physical healing. The Casa Sollievo della Sofferenza, or House for the Relief of Suffering, opened in 1956. Padre Pio transferred direct operation of the hospital to the Vatican, allowing for direct oversight of the project. Pope Pius XIV released him from his poverty vow in 1957. Many people came to San Giovanni Rotondo to meet him, confess, seek his assistance, or simply out of curiosity. Padre Pio began to develop wounds on his hands and feet in September 1918, comparable to Christ's wounds known as stigmata. In the months that followed, his reputation as a holy figure developed tremendously in San Giovanni Rotondo, bringing hundreds of pilgrims to the monastery every day to see him. Padre Pio became a symbol of hope and regeneration for many who endured adversity throughout wartime. Those closest to him witnessed the development of various spiritual gifts, such as healing, bilocation, levitation, prophecy, miracles, extraordinary abstinence from sleep and food, the ability to understand hearts, fluency in multiple languages, the power to convert people, and the presence of wounds that emitted a pleasant fragrance. His supernatural experiences included glimpses of celestial figures, conversations with angels, and even actual encounters with Satan and demons. These reports of remarkable happenings surrounding Padre Pio earned him widespread fame and admiration. Despite the Vatican's mistrust, Some of these experiences were recorded by Padre Pio himself in letters to his spiritual directors, while others were told by his disciples. Padre Pio's fame spread beyond his immediate community, and he became known as a spiritual teacher who established 5 fundamental principles for spiritual growth: weekly confession, daily communion, spiritual reading, meditation, and self-examination. Pio disclosed in his communication that he had marks on his body, suffering, and stigmata since the beginning of his priesthood, albeit they were not noticeable at first. In a letter dated March 21, 1912, to his spiritual companion and confessor, Padre Agostino, Padre Pio expressed his deep connection with the mystical body of Christ and his premonition that he would one day bear visible stigmata. In another letter, dated 1915, Agostino questioned Padre Pio about his early visions, asking whether he was stigmatized and if he felt the pains of Christ's passion, such as the crowning with thorns and the flagellation. Padre Pio responded that he began having visions during his novitiate between 1903 and 1904, and confirmed that he had stigmata. He also shared that he was so troubled by these phenomena that he implored God to remove the visible stigmata, though he did not wish for the pain to disappear. For him, the wounds were an extreme and almost unbearable humiliation. On September 20, 1918, while hearing confessions, Padre Pio again felt the stigmata on his body. It was said that the blood from these wounds exuded a scent of flowers or perfume. He told Agostino that the pain was constant and intensified on certain days and in specific situations, but he preferred to suffer in silence. At the beginning of 1919, people began learning about Padre Pio's stigmata. He often wore red gloves or black coverings on his hands and feet because he felt embarrassed by these marks. It is said that these stigmata lasted for 50 years until his passing. After the stigmata became known, Padre Pio's wounds were examined by many doctors, including some hired by the Vatican for an independent investigation. These doctors reported that the wounds were a mystery and never showed signs of infection, though they sometimes seemed to heal. The wounds periodically reappeared. In 1954, Alberto Serra took X-rays of Padre Pio's hands and found nothing abnormal in the bones. A few weeks before receiving the stigmata in August 1918, Padre Pio had a mystical experience where he felt as though he was being physically pierced and burned. This experience, which began on August 5th and ended on August 7th, was interpreted by his spiritual guide, Father Benedetto, as a transverberation. Padre Pio later said that this experience left a physical wound on his left side. Many who examined the wounds noticed a cross-shaped mark, about 7.5 centimeters long, on the left side of his body. On September 20, 1918, while hearing confessions, Padre Pio again felt the stigmata on his body. People said that the blood from these wounds smelled like flowers or perfume. He told Agostino that the pain was constant and increased on certain days and in certain situations, but he preferred to suffer in silence. At the beginning of 1919, people started learning about Padre Pio's stigmata. He often wore red gloves or black coverings on his hands and feet due to his embarrassment over these marks. It is said that the stigmata lasted for 50 years until he passed away. Once the stigmata became widely known, Padre Pio's wounds were examined by various doctors, including those hired by the Vatican. These doctors reported that the wounds were a mystery, showing no signs of infection despite occasionally seeming to heal. The wounds would reappear periodically. In 1954, Alberto Serra took X-rays of Padre Pio's hands and found nothing abnormal in his bones. A few weeks before receiving the stigmata in August 1918, Padre Pio had a mystical experience feeling as though he was physically pierced and burned. This experience, which lasted from August 5th to August 7th, was interpreted by his spiritual guide, Father Benedetto, as a transverberation. Padre Pio later claimed that this experience left a physical wound on his left side, and those who examined him noticed a cross-shaped mark, about 7.5 centimeters long. After his passing in 1968, Padre Pio's body was placed in a coffin inside the monastery's church, allowing pilgrims to pay their final respects. The farewell ceremony took place on September 26 and was attended by approximately 100,000 people. The event included a funeral procession and a mass held in San Giovanni Rotondo, where Padre Pio was buried in the crypt of the Church of Our Lady of Grace. This town, where Padre Pio spent much of his life, became a significant pilgrimage destination in his memory. The Church of Santa Maria del Grazie, part of the Capuchin monastery where Padre Pio held his masses, gained great importance as a pilgrimage site after his death. With the increasing number of visitors, the Capuchins built a new sanctuary near the church, completed in 2004 and inaugurated with the blessing of Pope John Paul II. Padre Pio's relics were placed in the new crypt of the sanctuary, where pilgrims could venerate them. Additionally, Pietrelcina, the town where Padre Pio grew up, also became a popular pilgrimage site. In Pietrelcina, visitors can explore significant places related to his life, such as the house where he was born, the room in an old tower where he retreated during periods of illness, the Church of Saint and where he was baptized, the Church of Santa Maria degli Angeli, where he was ordained a deacon, and the Capuchin Church of the Holy Family. It is estimated that about 2 million pilgrims visit Pietrelcina annually. In 1982, the Vatican granted permission for the Archbishop of Manfredonia to initiate an investigation to determine if Padre Pio could be canonized. This investigation lasted 7 years, and in 1990, Padre Pio received the title of a Servant of God, marking the first stage of the canonization process. From that year onward, the Congregation for the Causes of Saints began to analyze Padre Pio's life and deeds, and in 1997, Pope John Paul II proclaimed him venerable. Subsequent discussions focused on the positive impact his life had on others, including the healing of an Italian woman, Consiglia de Martino, which was attributed to his intercession. John Paul II declared Padre Pio blessed and designated September 23 as his liturgical feast day. The beatification ceremony took place that year, with John Paul II presiding over the Mass in St. Peter's Square in Rome, which was attended by over 300,000 faithful. During the homily, John Paul II highlighted Padre Pio's stigmata and mystical gifts. After the beatification, another miracle involving the recovery of an Italian boy named Matteo Colella from a coma was attributed to Padre Pio's intercession. With further analysis of his virtues and lasting impact, John Paul II eventually issued the decree for his canonization. On March 3, 2008, 40 years after his death, Padre Pio's body was exhumed from his crypt to prepare for public display. The church reported that the body was in reasonable condition. Archbishop Domenico Umberto D'Ambrosio, the Pope's representative at the San Giovanni Rotondo sanctuary, noted that the upper part of the skull was partially skeletal, but the chin was intact, and the rest of the body was well preserved. He also mentioned that the stigmata were no longer visible, and that Padre Pio's hands appeared freshly cared for. Due to the deteriorated state of the face, a realistic silicone mask was made based on a 1968 photograph of Padre Pio. This work was done by the GEM studio in London, known for its contributions to wax museums and exhibitions. On April 24, Cardinal José Saraiva Martins celebrated a Mass for 15,000 faithful. at the sanctuary of Our Lady of Grace in San Giovanni Rotondo. Before Padre Pio's body was placed in a casket made of crystal, marble, and silver, located in the monastery crypt. He was dressed in his traditional brown Capuchin habit, a white silk stole embroidered with crystals and gold thread, and was holding a large wooden cross. About 800,000 pilgrims, mainly from Italy, booked visits to see the body until December 2008. Due to high demand, the display was extended for another year. Months later, Padre Pio's remains were moved to a special golden crypt in the Church of St. Pio near the original location in San Giovanni Rotondo. Padre Pio, the revered Italian priest known for the stigmata he bore, is also associated with various mystical phenomena and prophecies, including the intriguing and still debated prophecy of the 3 days of darkness. This prophecy suggests the possibility of catastrophic events in 2025, raising questions about its veracity and the extent of Padre Pio's prophetic gift. He was known for his ability to predict future events with great accuracy, often surprising those around him with the clarity of his visions. Padre Pio's prophecies for 2025 range from natural disasters to major global disturbances, covering a wide array of topics that provide insights into possible future developments. Many of his followers believe these predictions are proof of his divine connection and profound spiritual discernment, interpreting them as evidence of his holiness and his intimate relationship with God. The legend of the 3 days of darkness tells of a terrifying time when darkness will cover the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. According to this legend, the darkness will be so intense that only candles made of blessed beeswax will provide light during this period. Many tragedies may occur. Demons will appear, and those opposed to the church will meet their end. This legend is similar to stories from the Bible, such as the 10 plagues of Egypt and the visions of the end of the world in the book of Revelation, where mysterious darkness plays an important role. It is believed that this legend was written by Padre Pio in a letter to the Haraldsbach Commission, which was allegedly chosen by the Vatican. This letter, written between 1949 and 1950, includes several revelations that Jesus supposedly shared with Padre Pio, speaking about the 3 days of darkness that would come before the end of the world. In the instructions given by Padre Pio, he recommended that people prepare by closing their windows, praying the rosary, reading spiritual books, taking care of animals, and, most importantly, staying indoors. The prophecy describes an extremely cold night with howling winds, and, after a while, thunder will be heard. It advises securely closing all doors and windows, avoiding speaking with anyone outside the house, kneeling before a crucifix, confessing sins, and seeking the protection of the Mother of Jesus. Great importance is placed on repentance and the atonement of sins as essential ways to face the difficulties ahead. Those who believe in this prophecy say that following these guidelines will result in divine protection, and that normalcy will be restored with the sunrise on the 4th day. Many also believe in the miracles attributed to Padre Pio, including writings that are said to have been delivered directly by Jesus Christ. These texts are considered profound, carrying urgency and intense spiritual significance. They are seen not just as simple letters, but as true divine warnings. The letter that Padre Pio supposedly received from Jesus addresses end of the world themes, similar to those found in biblical prophecies. It compares the great suffering to what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah and warns of imminent and certain divine judgment. The tone is serious and urgent, conveying a strong message that calls for immediate action in the spiritual lives of the readers and their conversion. My son, I long for the moment when I will show again the great love of my heart. Pray and do penance for me. Ask others to do the same. For the time is coming when I will visit my unbelieving people, for not having taken advantage of the time of my grace. Keep praying so that your enemy will not have power over you. Additionally, the prophecy suggests that there will be a great purification during this period. Those who have prepared spiritually will be protected, while those who have not will face great challenges. The faithful are encouraged to use blessed objects, such as holy water and sacred candles, to protect themselves and their homes. It will be a disaster much worse than a war. Many things will disappear, and this will be one of the signs. Prepare yourselves to live in total darkness. These days are very near, and during these days, you will feel as if you are dead, without eating or drinking. The different interpretations of the prophecy of the 3 days of darkness show how it affects people. Some believe it truly predicts what will happen in the future, while others see it as symbolic, an invitation for spiritual growth. Regardless of how one interprets it, this prophecy captures the attention of Catholics around the world, bringing an air of mystery and fascination. For some, it is a warning of a great catastrophe to come, while for others, it is a chance to reflect and grow in faith. In any case, this prophecy is a striking example of how Catholic predictions can be mysterious and intriguing. Want to know more about what Padre Pio predicted for 2025? If you enjoy our content and want to support us, click on the Super Thanks button below. Your super thanks is not just a donation. It is a blessing that supports our mission to share the transformative journey of Jesus. Take a look at the video that's appearing on your screen now. And if you like what you watch, remember to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content.